Hello horror hereticals, hope you have enjoyed my last Asian Trips Featurette. Trips had a double meaning of going on a cinematic journey into Asian horror, as well as stands for the triple whammy of reviews for each featurette. Today, we start our journey with Taiwan, which definitely saw a boom in horror films in the past decade. Perhaps we could coin as T-horror, this time with director Philip Shi, Antikalpa from 2023. There was no meaning in the English title, but the Chinese title Hua Jie refers to resolving a threat in your life and a common colloquial used in Taiwan society for people entrapped in some spiritual doldrums that might even threaten their mortality. The story entails the misadventures of our protagonist Ah Tai, which translated as dummy in English. Not a vote of confidence there, huh? Ah Tai's family owned a legitimate temple, one of the thousands in an undiscernible part of Taiwan. Ah Tai had a crush on a friend from his karate class called Yifan, whose paternal auntie had been lost for months, and both Yifan and auntie's husband were in desperation of her returning home after her mysterious disappearance. As dumb young people, Ah Tai and his karate cohorts would seek spiritual help or something very occultist like summoning an entity using a Ouija board, while their intention was to solicit favors from a deity from Ah Tai's temple, which of course was not the conventional method. This seems to happen during the 7th month of the lunar calendar, which of course was ominous for what they do, yet was also the golden opportunity to seek such favors. The lot of them had a brush with death the year before, yet they did not take heed of the lesson. Ah Tai would usually puapui to seek permission from the deity, but due to peer pressures, he absconded the deity despite not getting the affirmative answer from the god. Things got even more sinister when Ah Tai and his buddy encountered a religious procession held in a sketchy temple which evidently was unorthodox and of evil context. Of course, this was a cautionary tale for the insolence that such ritual was going to rebound badly on the participants, and it certainly did not end well for the various members of the karate dojo. Ah Tai's parents had to be enlisted for help, despite it would mean big trouble for Ah Tai, and it was death-defying ordeal for the people involved. I was really interested in the concept of a one-yin miao, or in Taiwan known as a yin temple, where patrons would pray at ghosts, resident spirits of the region, basically anything that was not actual deities. The boom of this kind of unpropitious temples was rooted from the recalcitrant greed and ugliness of the humankind, who were too bought into making a windfall through gambling, and when a couple of people got their prayers answered, the ugly heads of more unscrupulous people would come to seek the most unimaginable requests. In the movie, praying to the supposed goddess of this temple came with a dear price to pay, and Yifan's auntie was one of the victims who became a vessel of the malevolent goddess when she willingly offered up her 八字, a lesson the author would like to inculcate in her readers and viewers. The scary visuals that director Shi and his team had concocted were not too shoddy, yet the scares felt too calculated and predictable. The gore on screen was also a bit light in view of passing censorship in the various Asian markets. I had no love for the young cast, especially the precious puppy love between Ah Tai and Yifan, and I was definitely rooting for the whole of them to meet the worst fate ever. Based on a best-selling horror fiction from writer Ling Qing, who had a rabid following, Antikalpa was not well received by the readers of the source material, and I could see how it pales in comparison to other horror features from the country. There could be still interesting facts from religious beliefs and mythical laws that could pique the interest of viewers who were unfamiliar with these facts. I am awarding a 5.5 out of 10 rating for this movie. From a Taiwanese horror movie based on a best-selling horror novel, to a South Korean supernatural feature based off a webcomics, 2024's Spring Garden or Neulbom Garden or Neulbom the Cursed in some markets was directed by Koo Tae-jin. The story was by Baek Yu-seo and illustrated by artist 712, was surely based on one of the famous haunted hotspots in South Korea in the Neulbom Garden restaurant, where a blissful family of 3 were torn apart after an unfortunate accident. We started with a prologue of a bunch of young people exploring the creepy Neulbom Garden residence, not a restaurant in the movie, Like what have unraveled in the webcomics, the malevolent entity residing there scared the wits out of the group of young people. We then transposed to our heroine So-hee, who became widowed when her husband passed on from suicide. Her misery was compounded when her grief affected her pregnancy, leading her to suffer a miscarriage. The deceased husband inherited So-hee that scary newborn garden, where there was a hidden secret from the husband that was kept under wraps, and the widow and her relatives had to bear with the paranormal phenomena there. Then there was this creepy weirdo who trespassed her private property like a harbinger of bad news, like the scary Reverend Kane in Poltergeist. As a horror trope, we audience of course know that the man will be a savior in disguise. To be truthful, it was hard to fully concentrate on the shenanigans on screen, as some police detective was on the trail of So-hee when she was on a mission to uncover the mystery, while her sister's children started seeing the apparition of her late husband, who had came in the form of a nightmare that made her wake up in cold sweat. To say the plot was all over the place was an understatement. The filmmakers wanted to create a dramatic moment with So-hee at the climactic end, but I felt that the presentation was awfully flaccid. The scares were not too awful, but none was remotely memorable as well. Jo Yoon-hee played our protagonist So-hee and was supposedly to be a notable actress. She was not really that good in her performance. Neulbom Garden was up there alongside Gongjam Asylum and Yeongdeok Haunted House as the three renowned haunted places in South Korea, but the very first film representation of the location was so inferior as compared to the monumental horror flick about enduring the scary interior of Gongjam. This is an unprecedented 3.5 out of 10 rating from me. From a South Korean widow So-hee who had her life turned upside down, we now visit a Malaysian girl Safan struggling with the physical changes of puberty. Tiger Stripes from 2023 is a coming-of-age body horror feature, and it is the full-length film directorial debut of Malaysian-British director Amanda Nell Yu. The movie chronicled the life-changing travails young Safan had to endure as she started her menstruation that escalated to more overt changes that she was not prepared for. From the onset, we could see Zafan struggling to conform to the stringent discipline of her all-girls Muslim school. Zafan loves to make TikTok videos in the school compound, eluding the watchful eyes of the school authority and creating ruckus after school with her buddies Mariam and Farah. Struggling to find her niche in school, both in terms of academics and popularity, Zafan was also looked upon as a problem child at home in the eyes of her mother. However, when Zafan had her first period, she was in dire need of maternal comfort and guidance, which as audience, it felt like it was a pesky chore from her unaffectionate mother. Back in school, Zafan was starting to be alienated due to her physiological altercations, and Farah, who perhaps bore a seed of jealousy towards her all this time, took the opportunity to twist the dagger further into Zafan's mental laceration and absconded Mariam away from her. Things got worse for poor Zafan when she started to notice things like facial hair, blood red rashes, and strange physical changes that was bewildering, and she had no one to consult with. In the background on the social media, there was a raging news of a wild tiger on the loose in their village without much context, but linked with Zafan's father, who seems to be assigned to hunt the feral creature. Into Act 3 of the plot, we started to see Zafan trying to fight back, despite still facing obstacles. This was when things got a bit whimsical, and people who are into horror laws of this region would start to have a kick of things. From seeing apparition up on the tree, to mass possession that was well documented in Malaysia previously, to having a snake oil salesman for a witch doctor or a bomo to try to calm the nerves in the communal panic. I thought it was a great final stretch to the ending, which director Yu left it open-ended. Director Amanda Nell Yu had a couple of notable horror short films before Tiger Stripes. In 2017's It's Easier to Raise Cattle, she went into talking about the supernatural law that the Southeast Asia is obsessed with, the entity known as Kuntilanak. Then in 2019's Vinegar Bath, Yu touched upon Penangau, the dismembered hate witch lady that targeted on pregnant women to feed on their unborn babies. Of course, Yu made both shots with a whimsical twist, something she replicated here in Tiger Stripes. In an interview, Yu mentioned since young she loved watching horror movies, enjoying the thrill of it. However, she does not succumb to typical film tropes in her works. She felt that jump scares was not her forte. She prefers to use real folk tales and the experiences of real people to her advantage and to elicit a stronger response out of her viewers. There was something very raw and authentic with the characters Yu molded in Tiger Stripes and made it effortlessly to empathize with the plight of Zafan. Young actress Zafrin Zairiza did a competent job in her performance as Zafan, as she really went through a lot of physical and emotional upheavals in this role. I love that Yu did not overload the film with a score and let the sound of nature in which the characters were surrounded with be the soundtrack, and it added a lot for the immersion to the environment. Tiger Stripes had its level of body horror to elicit a response from audience, and is seamless to run parallel with a classic like David Cronenberg's The Fly with the body metamorphosis. The plot was a delight and easy to grasp, and you can feel the energy and the creativity from the filmmaker on display to deliver something refreshing and novel. I'm awarding Tiger Stripes an 8 out of 10. This particular Asian Trips episode is quite a ride, and hope you had enjoyed it nonetheless. Please click the like button if that is the case. Please subscribe to this channel and help me spread the words around. My previous review was on Steven Soderbergh's Presence, which might not be your conventional horror affair. There is this running theme of the folly of youth from these 3 movies reviewed, so I wonder if any young upstarts will film an offensive TikTok video with a deity statue in the middle of Neulbom Garden building, while counting down to the harm that awaits them.